When we previously covered weird equip spells in Yu-Gi-Oh!, we realized there were way more than 10 that were a bit more outlandish than we expected. In the early game, equip spells were aesthetically weapons, items, or magic that you equip to your or your opponent's monsters for simple buffs or nerfs, but now they've become a mechanic of the game that gets as complex as the rest of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So since it was so fun the first time, and a lot of you seem to enjoy it, we're double dipping into the other half of equip cards that we found to be at least a little strange. Just like the previous video on this topic, we consider these equip spells weird due to their effect, their art, or just because it seems like something that you can't physically equip. Like what's getting equipped on this living fossil card? Am I giving my monster a fancy suit? Anyway, same co-hosts as last time. Corgian?
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on double-edged sword.
Sam from Dungeon Dive Bar?
We did it. We solved Yu-Gi-Oh!
Professor Oats?
Perhaps us straying from the premise is the premise.
SyzygySolo?
Can't believe they gave Toon's rollback before Street Fighter V.
And Judgment Meter.
I don't know what's happening in here.
Now, let's bounce the top 10 weirdest equip spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! Volume 2. Number 10, Ekibio Drakmord. I just can't bring myself to criticize this card. It's such a product of its time, where, despite the seemingly arbitrary length of turns it takes to do something, it's actually a decent card for early Yu-Gi-Oh! It's meant to be a hindrance for your opponent, where you equip it to one of their monsters, and that monster can't attack. In the old days, when there was sparse removal beyond battling other monsters to destroy them, stopping your opponent from attacking was the big way to stall and was pretty common for floodgates at the time. Wasn't Swords of Revealing Light the first floodgate in the game? However, Ekibio Drakmord came with a bonus effect. The second turn after it's activated, the equipped monster is destroyed and Drakmord returns to the owner's hand. Now that sounds painfully slow and weird by today's standards, but in 2003, we would take any form of removal, and you get to choose the monster that you're removing, unlike a card like Fissure which automatically destroys the lowest attack monster. Plus it returns back to your hand when it's done. Wow, I can reuse it without Magician of Faith. This card's a steal. Konami wasn't quite sure how overpowered a destruction effect would be after the Age of Regeki, so I understand that they were cautious with the 2-turn wait.
So I like the concept of this card. In primordial Yu-Gi-Oh!, where you just bought a bunch of random packs, you probably didn't have any spell and trap removal, and attacking was really important. You hit your Gemini Elf over things smaller than Gemini Elf, and that kind of is a game ender. So like can't attack, comes back into your hand. Like the only advantage you had in those days was twin-pronged attack, the old 3-for-1. Like this was back in the day when like Flint was a game ender. I love that.
If anything, the weirdest thing about this card to me was the art. I couldn't tell what I was equipping to my monster. Like, is the art implying that we're equipping all these blue monsters to this other blue monster? What's going on? I eventually learned that it's supposed to be the monsters succumbing to a virus, with the Japanese name translating to Plague Virus Black Dust. So you're forcing a virus upon these guys that, I don't know, turns them a different color, gives them spots? I don't know what they looked like before the virus.
I think they're related to the Trap Hole Goblins, but they're just kind of sad and full of plague.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Was really good at just like punishing goblins as an example. They fall into a hole, they get the murder virus, they get hit by a flint in the head.
I don't think this is that bad of a fate to have. On one hand, you get muscular, your skin gets a little darker, and it looks like you get a lot of friends. All these are good things. Bad, you die in 2 turns.
On the one hand, Ekibio, and on the other hand, Drakmord, you know?
Yeah.
And I mentioned it before, but let's just quickly end the segment on why its translated name is so weird.
So, the Japanese name is very simple. Plague Virus Black Dust. Ikibio is a Japanese word for pestilence.
And Virus Black Dust was just written with English pronunciation and Japanese katakana on the card, and they were nice enough to keep the Akibio when translating it to English.
Drakmord, however, is the Swedish word for murder. However, the prefix drak is dragon, so this card's English name translates from Japanese and Swedish to Dragon Murder Pestilence.
Why did they just randomly add Swedish in there?
I can understand them using Swedish because if someone went to IKEA, bought a couch, and said this is called a Yu-Gi-Oh, I would accept it. I would get it. I think it would be correct.
Yeah, so do I.
Number 9, Broken Bamboo Sword. Broken Bamboo Sword is one of those cards that seems too terrible to be true. Like, come on, equip it and raise your monster's attack by 0. It literally does nothing. My monster's hands were lonely, so I gave it some trash I had lying around.
It's the best equipped spell in the game! theme. The equipped monster gains 0 attack. This is the equip spell equivalent of Toon World.
I like how this bamboo sword is broken, it is destroyed, it is demolished, and still, the duelist decides to bestow it upon their monster. There is no reason to hold this, and yet you must.
The monster's not even going to question it. You can literally use this in Infernoble Knight, and these big chunky warriors are like, I take my sword. Oh, crap.
You could give it to something that doesn't even have hands, like Cyber Dragon. It's just gonna be like, yeah, this is my broken bamboo sword.
I'm giving this to my Croco Dragon, just holding it between his big old teethers.
Ah yes, I equip my gruesome goo with the broken bamboo sword.
I equip Slifer the Sky Dragon with my broken bamboo sword.
Oh god, you can give the broken bamboo sword to all the gods!
Nope, not Obelisk. He can't be targeted.
And now I'm just imagining Slifer and Ra having a little cute sword fight with broken bamboo sword, and Obelisk just really sad in the corner.
What's really funny is that equipping broken bamboo sword from your hand to Slifer actively makes it worse.
Yeah, you lose 1,000 attack for it.
However, despite the effect, it does have a purpose. There's a small archetype of spell cards called the bamboo swords. The other bamboo swords gain effects if another bamboo sword is activated or on the field, so you equip the broken one and then choose from your array of other bamboo swords. You've got Burning, which skips your opponent's next main phase if you control a bamboo sword. Cursed, which bounces a bamboo sword to let the monster attack directly. Golden, which lets you draw 2 cards if you control the bamboo sword. Soul Devouring, which equips to a monster with another bamboo sword to skip your opponent's next draw phase. And Original, which destroys all your opponent's monsters if you make a direct attack and equips a bamboo sword directly from the deck. So as you can see, Broken Bamboo Sword is just a catalyst for greater effects. It's more like having to play a crappy normal monster in your deck that supports better cards, like running a few normal Skull Servants to support your King of the Skull Servants. That being said, Konami did fake us out that this was a joke card, since Broken Bamboo Sword was released in Tactical Evolution in 2007 with no other bamboo swords in the set, so if you got this in a pack not knowing about its future support, you probably would just think it's garbage or for some cheap Maha Vilo strategy. Then the set after this got Soul Devouring Bamboo Sword, and 2 sets later got Golden Bamboo Sword, so they didn't keep us hanging for long. But still, it's funny that this card was released with no indication that it would eventually be useful. It's also involved in Exodia decks for draw power, so it does support a fan favorite monster indirectly.
So the way the Exodia OTK works is you get magical spell library or whatever that says for every spell card you use,
Royal Magical Library.
yeah, magical library, you add a token to it.
Counters.
For every spell that's used. This gets used, so it adds a token.
Counters.
And then there's Cursed Bamboo Sword that says if something has Broken Bamboo Sword, draw 2 cards or whatever.
Golden Bamboo Sword.
Yeah, Golden Bamboo Sword, that's the one. So it has great synergy to get you as many cards as you want, because Magical Library says for every 3 of those spell counters, you can draw a card. I love this card, because the first time I learned about it was when I got OTK'd by Exodia, and I was amazed that it existed.
Broken Bamboo Sword being used in Exodia decks makes it feel like the magic harp of equip spells. It looks and is useless on its own, but eventually it can lead to you getting a powerful monster, though Exodia probably one-shots Gyarados. Number 8, Mathmech Billion Blade Nayuta. Many archetypes just have a single random equip spell in them that people don't tend to use with the decks, but they are searchable, so they could have a niche purpose, and this one is for Mathmech. Mathmechs are a bunch of cybernetic dudes named after different mathematical terms who revive and summon each other based on those mathematic processes, along with supporting Cyburst monsters in general. They also have Mathmech Circular that basically says summon as many monsters as you'd like. The blade can equip to any Cyburst monster, and when that monster battles, you can send a Mathmech monster from your deck to your graveyard to boost that monster's attack by the Mathmech's attack value. And when the blade is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a Mathmech monster from your graveyard to your hand, like the one you just sent, or you've already revived that monster with a different effect. The blade has a fine effect that's just a worse version of other Cyburst support cards, and is ultimately forgettable, but what gets it on this list is the design. First off, that name is ridiculous. Billion Blade Nayuta. Nayuta is the Japanese term for 10 to the 60th power, so that number is big. Much bigger than any boost you can get from the moderately statted main deck Math Mech monsters, so it seems we have an exaggeration here. Also, the sword design is wacky.
I just love Math Mech card names, and also how terrible a sword this is. This is a drill that tried to be a chainsaw. I just wanted it for the art. It's supposed to be 1 billion, but I see like 10, maybe 10.
Do we have a sword list? I feel like this could be on a sword list, but a Yu-Gi-Oh sword list.
We only have that old anime sword list that we made because you wanted a .hack sign entry.
I know. I could talk about that all day.
But I think the part that upsets me the most about this card is they put cubes instead of Konami orbs in the sword.
Yeah, it's mathbacks.
No.
Meh.
Orbs are mathematical.
The Japanese card name just calls it Sword Nayuta, so they didn't go as crazy. I want to know why they chose billion for the English name. They're like, we have to go as big as possible. Number 7, Vengeful Servant. Early Yu-Gi-Oh! Loved effects that involved switching control of players' monsters. The most notable culprits were Change of Heart, Snatch Steal, and Brain Control, since they just stole your opponent's monsters for a bit with little to no downside, so much so that they eventually got banned or nerfed. But then there were those cards that also gave monsters to your opponent, like Creature Swap, where both you and your opponent choose a monster to give to each other. On occasion, there were monsters released that benefit you when they switch to your opponent, like Amoeba, who inflicts damage to your opponent when whoever controls it is changed, or Griggle, who has the same effect only it gains you life points. Those cards were bad, but they were combos for Creature Swap if you so desire, and they were little guys, so I always had a soft spot for them. Once the 5Ds era rolled around, they tried the give monsters to your opponent strategy again with Vengeful Servant, and it kinda feels like an early Yu-Gi-Oh card. When the monster equipped with Vengeful Servant changes control, it deals damage equal to its original attack points to the person who's receiving it.
I guess, like, the idea was, I summoned Blue Eyes White Dragon. This is the biggest monster ever. Let's forget Fissure exists for just 1 second. The only way you're getting around it is Change of Heart. But wait, I've made my Blue Eyes White Dragon very angry. So if you take him, he'll eat you. And they're at 3,000 life points, and that's the end of the game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Kaiba wins.
While this seems like an inefficient way to deal damage, plus your opponent gets your monster in return, there is another card released a few years before that synergizes well with it, Xian Spy, which gives your opponent one of your monsters until the end of the turn, so you get the monster back before your opponent can use it on their turn. It was a mostly unsearchable strategy, so you would need luck and a lot of draw power to draw both cards and a big monster that was good enough to deal damage with it. Though when the monster comes back to you at the end of the turn, you also take the damage from Vengeful Servant, so you would really want to finish off your opponent the turn that you do this. Though you can equip multiple Vengeful Servants, so the damage stacks for possible OTKs. However, what's more shocking to me is this card ended up being good in Duel Links, and not early Duel Links, 2024 Duel Links. Vengeful Servant came out in Duel Links in 2021 as a random common card, and it only dealt half damage since Duel Links plays with half the life points of the main game. It was mostly a gimmick strategy that was unreliable, but it used Xian Spy and something like the Arcana Force monster with 4,000 attack points, along with a massive amount of draw spells, like Into the Void or Allure of Darkness or Cup of Ace if you're feeling spicy. So with some luck, you might draw enough monsters, 2 Vengeful Servants, and a Spy to immediately deal 4,000 life points of damage and end the game on the spot. This went untouched until 2024, when the Zexal character Mizar was released in the game, and he had a skill that worked with the Tachyon archetype. Without going into too much detail, the skill basically lets you get a bunch of level 8 dragons on the field to easily summon your Tachyon or Galaxy Eyes Xyz monsters, but you could also summon Coach King Giant Trainer with them, who basically let you draw 3 cards, so you fill the rest of your deck with the draw spells, and with enough draws, you're bound to get 2 servants and a spy, and combine those with the Xyz monsters that he summons, which have at least 4,000 attack points, and you got yourself a 1-turn kill. Because of this, they limited Spy and Servant to 1 in March 2024 in Duel Links, and for the Duel Links ban list, that means you can only have one of those 2 cards in a deck at a single time, killing the strategy. But still, that means that there was a time in Vengeful Servant's life where it was involved in Tier 1. Good job for the little bird thing. I never really got what it was supposed to be.
Oh, that's a cute little one.
Now what do you think about the anime dude using the bird?
Do they have feathers for ears?
I think that's just his hat.
Oh. I was also thinking maybe it was a moth person or some earrings. I don't know. It looked cool.
I get making this an equip spell because it'd be really hard to target something and then keep something attached to it, but I like how you're being equipped with the concept of vengeance. Like, you're not being equipped with a sword, you're not being equipped with armor, you're just angry, you're just annoyed.
Number 6, Heart of the Clearwater. This one falls under my classic question of, how do I even equip this thing? Is the water supposed to be dousing my monster and that's how they get its effect? The picture always used to be confusing to me too, since I did not know where the red faces were coming from, and I didn't even know what they were supposed to be. I now see that they're raindrops, and I guess they're faces on the rain, but what, do they have mystical power? Why does this one get a close-up Dutch angle? That's what confused me the most. I couldn't tell what this shape was supposed to be.
I promise that this one drop of hot sauce would be really, really hot. I think he's very funny that he just kind of screams. This is not a heart. This is not even a soul. This is torture. This is where we all end up.
The closest explanation I saw is this is a Berserk reference, so maybe?
I have a theory for this card. Jerry, the artist who started taking over the cards, he made a really, really cool picture. And Mr. Konami saw it and said, I love this. We don't have any use for it. Let's make up a card specifically because we love this art. And that's what happened. So Heart of Clearwater was born, and that's why nothing about it makes sense.
Is that for real?
Yeah, it's actually true. If you check my Wikipedia that I made, Corgipedia.
If you were to put little pupils in the eyeballs of Heart of Clearwater, it kind of looks like a baboon.
The effect is fine, though limited to select monsters. It works by equipping to a monster with less than 1,300 attack points, and that monster can't be destroyed by battle or card effects that specifically target. So against Regeki, you're still screwed.
When I was a kid, I thought not being destroyed by battle was like unstoppable. Effect destruction, I don't know what that is. But like, damn, I can equip this to any monster and it's indestructible. That's unbelievable. I'm just gonna equip it to my, what has low enough attack? My Spirit Reaper. I'm just gonna,
So what's really funny I find with this card though is that 1,300 is just such a lame, like weird number to choose to restrict. Like, it's not an even 1,000, it's not a 5,000, it's just 13, but also the fact that this thing can still be targeted. It is such a niche genre of non-targetability where you can target them with anything, but if it destroys them, it just doesn't.
I also like that you can equip it to a monster with 1,300 or more attack points, it just gets destroyed if you do, which makes it funny if you try to raise a monster's attack past 1,300 that it's equipped with, and then boop, Heart of the Clearwater's destroyed. Number 5, Bubble Blaster and the other early elemental hero equip spells. Before equip cards were specialized for archetypes, Konami made them for specific monsters to avoid making them too good. And in hindsight, these cards are nearly unusable since they can only be used with one monster, unless you're Jaden in the anime and could draw them at the most plot convenient time. With elemental heroes being the hot new archetype of the GX era, some of the main monsters from the anime got their own equip spells, or just specific cards in general. Avion got Feather Shot and Featherwind, Bracinatrix got Burst Return, Blade Edge got Edge Hammer, but Bubbleman, Sparkman, Wildheart, and Clayman got some equip spells. Bubbleman's is Bubble Blaster, which gives him an 800 attack point boost and prevents him from battle damage and destruction once if you destroy the blaster. Not too shabby if it worked on more monsters. Sparkman had Spark Blaster, which lets you change any face-up monster's battle position, and you could use this effect 3 times before the blaster is destroyed. Cute little battle trick, good in a slow game with unevenly statted monsters. And Wildheart got Cyclone Boomerang, which gives him him a 500 attack point boost, and let you clear all spells and traps if Wild Heart is destroyed by an effect. A bit too situational, but maybe you could make it work. I'd say Bubble Blaster is one of my favorite early elemental hero support cards, and I think it's just because it's a giant bubble bazooka. How's this hurting anyone?
Can I analyze this card from an engineering perspective and tell you how stupid it is? Normally when you're designing something that's missile-shaped, it's meant to go in a singular direction, and you want it to be at least symmetrical on one axis. This is asymmetrical on all axes. And not only that, it has two things functioning as a sail. If you were to use this as a projectile, it would launch forward, and then it would veer hard to the left. And then it would just keep veering to the left over and over and over. It would spin around and hit you. It is an incredible design.
I can imagine that in the Yu-Gi-Oh universe, because Bubble Man is supposed to be like a parallel to Batman, I could see people getting mad like, oh, that Bubble Blaster in the new movie is way too extreme. And it's like, nah, it's Batman. It's not lethal. He'll never kill people with bubbles.
I don't think he will. He's 800 attack plus he's only 1600 attack with the Bubble Blaster. That's like equal to Sparkman. Can't even get through a Clayman. And that guy's supposed to be weak to water. Pokemon joke.
Really, Bubble Man is just one of my favorite of the original hero bunch in general, since he's a goofy guy. Look at him on Bubble Illusion. This effect isn't good, but this man is having a great time. When's he getting his top hat back?
No. No.
Oh, come on. He looks cool. Don't be immune to fun.
So happy for him. He needs that.
Okay, fine. Who's your favorite of the elemental heroes?
Who's the one with the Konami orbs? I was gonna say Blackluster Soldier, but I don't think that's right. See, black or purple?
Sparkman?
Sparkman. Sparkman? Is that my favorite? Maybe I don't like any of them. Maybe they all suck.
Disclaimer, elemental heroes are actually cool. That's just like Judgment Meter's opinion, man.
Also, does Sparkman even have orbs?
Yeah, he has Konami orbs. He has Orbeez.
Okay, great. So Sparkman's your favorite.
It's not my favorite. He's just like the one that I least dislike.
Oh. And I mentioned Clayman got equipped spells, but strangely, they were only in the anime and never printed. He had Mud Max, which was a vehicle that gives him a small boost and negated one attack, so not that good. And Clay Wrap, which destroys a spell or trap on the field if Clayman goes to the graveyard, so also not that good. But why are we wrapping Clayman? What was the logic of this art? Everyone else gets a weapon and he gets Saran Wrap instead. Number 4, Legendary Black Belt. Going off the previous entry of equip spells meant for specific monsters, there's Legendary Black Belt, which can only be equipped to Monk Fighter, Master Monk, and Chu-Ske the Mouse Fighter. This one always felt weirder than the hero spells to me, since the heroes were a new major anime archetype, so I kinda got the special treatment. Like I never batted an eye at monsters like Harpy Lady getting their own cards. But the trio of monsters this spell could equip to are so irrelevant to the game today and never got any traction when they were released, so them getting their own spells feels odd in retrospect, or at least like a failed experiment. When Legendary Black Belt is equipped to them, if they destroy a monster by battle and send it to the graveyard, you inflict damage equal to that monster's defense points to the opponent. Wow, that's all? They couldn't just make this a generic effect, or at least cover all warriors?
This is very funny, because this only can equip to, like, either the 2 monks or that one little mouse, but this implies that the Master Monk isn't a black belt by himself, but rather some lower rank, but maybe he is the best. Maybe it just is that hard.
Yeah, it's a strip of fabric.
Yeah, but it's worn by...
Someone who does martial arts.
Technically, yes.
But it's just such a weird concept of, like, you have this karate master, his apprentice, and his apprentice's pet rat.
So there's actually nothing in Chu-Ske the Mouse Fighter connecting to Master Monk or Monk Fighter. A fiery mouse traveling the world to become the strongest fighter in the world of mice. There's no humans involved in the story whatsoever. But like this expands the monk/mouse lore and maybe sets up like a Kung Fu Ratatouille.
Yeah, I mean, he's based on Bruce Lee, but I don't know if there's any logic on why they made Bruce Lee a mouse and paired him with these 2 monks.
The Bruce Lee movie, Ratatouille.
I think the idea was to use this equip spell with their other 2 support cards. The spell Kaminote Blow allows this trio to automatically destroy any monster they battle with at the end of the damage step, and they exemplify that by showing Master Monk destroying destroying Millennium Shield on the art, which has 3,000 defense points. Though that works against the equip spell since it doesn't count as being destroyed by battle, so Black Belt won't trigger. Their other support card was the continuous trap Lone Wolf, which protects them enough so they can eventually get to the battle phase to do all this stuff. It was also weird how Chu-Ske was released one set before everything else in Flaming Eternity. Like, he feels like a normal monster you'd see in the very early sets, and he was released with no indication that he'd get any support eventually. I just thought the gimmick was that he was a Bruce Lee inspired mouse.
I love it.
Number 3, Germ Infection. This card is also an illness that you equip to your opponent's monster like with Ekibio Drakmord, but while we cut that card some slack, Germ Infection just always kinda sucked, and I think they realized it. This card was released in the second TCG set, Metal Raiders, and never got reprinted for another set. When equipped, the monster loses 300 attack points during each standby phase, so it doesn't help you right away. Assuming you equip it during the main phase like you normally would, the first attack drop will land on your next turn since it's only your standby phase and not both you and your opponent's standby phases, so you don't even get the benefit of dropping their attack right away. But hey, eventually that attack value will go down by 300, and then maybe 600 if everyone waits around a bit. Yeah, this was too slow for even 2002. Just get an attack boosting equip spell for your own monsters instead. Oh, and to add to the weirdness, it arbitrarily doesn't affect machine monsters. Early Yu-Gi-Oh! Liked having random type immunity sometimes, likely in reference to how some types were immune to other types in the anime and manga. Since they dropped that concept early on, it looks especially weird when you come across a card like this now.
I love Germ Infection. I think this really exemplifies early Yu-Gi-Oh's lack of understanding of what would actually be good. So not only is it attack reduction, which is meaningless during standby phases, it also has non-machine targeting? Sure.
The flavor, though. If I get infected by the flu, I don't get the symptoms right away. And if I'm a robot, I can't get the flu.
This is clear bias towards one specific type, obviously machines. Because if this card affected machines, you're looking at like Cyber Dragons, who? Like Orchist what? ABCs? Forget about it.
You can't stop a snowplow. You just can't.
You know, I started playing Orchists just to counter this card.
I stopped playing machine decks because I'm a masochist and wanted to feel this.
I like that it's non-machines because it means there was zero future-proofing. Because why would cybers, which are digital beings, be susceptible to germs?
Computer virus.
Why are machines not susceptible to a computer virus?
They're not computers.
Show me a machine that isn't a computer.
Ancient Gear Golem. Where's the computer?
In the brain.
No, that's just gears.
What is gears but a machine brain?
No, gears are just gears.
Geargia.
So true. Geargian.
Number 2, Flint. We've referenced Flint a couple of times on both equip lists, and it even got its own entry on our list about cards based on Konami video games, but it's an equip spell that's weird, so it deserves its own entry here too. Its immediate effect is a combination of Ekibio Drakmord and Germ Infection, where it lowers a monster's attack by 300 and prevents them from attacking or changing battle positions. However, if the monster equipped with it is destroyed, you can choose a new target for Flint to equip to, so as long as a monster exists on either side of the field, Flint remains active.
I mean, Flint functions. It's just such a weird effect to have that it, like, re-equips itself. Like, it never really leaves, which I think is very funny.
In, like, primordial Yu-Gi-Oh! Where no spell and trap destruction, like, people don't own MSTs, things are just swinging into each other. Flint is just, like, chaos. It is the end of worlds, and it's so funny. Oh, no. Flint.
What's also cool about Flint to me is its origin. As mentioned in our cards based on Konami games list, Flint was the main weapon from the space shoot-'em-up game Zexx. Still don't know how to pronounce that one. The ship using Flint could release it to float around on the stage and attack enemies, along with gaining power-ups. Then when it was done, it could latch back onto the ship, similar to how Flint equips to other monsters. In fact, the ship, called Flintlock, eventually became its own card, which can equip Flint to itself if it's on another monster on the field and it's immune to its effects, and then it can re-equip it to another monster. Unfortunately, Flintlock came out in 2007, while Flint came out in 2004, so the Flint strategy was kinda stale by the time the ship was released, but still, I respect them for making Flint one of the first equipped spells with legit support. It even got another support card in 2007 called Flint Missile, which blows up the monster equipped with Flint and lets you shuffle Flint back into the deck. It even got a lady based around it. Wait, no, that's a monster named after the rock, Flint. Alright, this time we're actually doing honorable mentions. Snatch Steal. Classic card. It steals your opponent's monster, but the art went nuts to a point where I used to not be able to tell what was going on. I get now that it's someone stealing that sack from someone else, but the shading on both these people made them look kinda evil, and their poses made it feel like they were jumping out at me, so I didn't know what affiliation they had with each other. And are they in a void of like anime speed lines? Does the art imply the sack is the monster that I'm stealing? And the Japanese name for this card was just pillage. Why did they rename it as two verbs in English that also mean pillage? I love this card, but a lot of things about it make me think. Double Tool C and D. This card is fine, but the name misled us into thinking that there is a double tool A and B. Kaioregetsu. This card has a lot going on since it's a big Arc 5 reference, but the main unique thing that got my attention is it's the only equip card that targets a monster in hand to activate. All other equip cards can only target monsters on the field or in the graveyard for revival effects. But yeah, read this whole card sometimes. It's crazy, not broken, but just kinda crazy.
They're not even high-fiving. They're doing it wrong. I hate this.
And Falling Down, since as I said in the intro for the other equip spell list, how can you equip the concept of falling down to someone? That's just ridiculous.
He doesn't look like he's falling down. He's just hunched over. I think this is misleading.
I love the concept of equipping falling down. It's not like you're equipping like a heavy rock or something. You are equipping the concept of falling, which I believe is an incredible mental feat to do, to equip a physical action into yourself.
Oh, I interpreted this as falling down the fanfiction rabbit hole and getting to the Mpreg section, which is what this looks like to me.
Can that go in the video?
No.
You might have to PG up that joke.
He's pregnant.
You're not PGing up the joke.
I'm sorry, he's pregnant.
For number 1, it was hard to say what the weirdest of this bunch was, since when Yu-Gi-Oh cards are bad, they all kinda blend together into this mediocre casserole, so we went with the equip spell that's bad, but also unintentionally good in some scenarios. Number 1, Rod of Silence Chaos. This was part of an archetype called Guardian. It's an early Yu-Gi-Oh gimmick where the Guardian monster could only be summoned if the equipped card with their name was on the field, meaning you would have to equip it to another monster first. They were used by Raphael in the anime, who had a monster that let you move equip spells on it to other monsters, so most of the Guardians still got to wield the weapon in their artwork in the anime thanks to that effect. A few of the boss Guardians were released later on in real life, but they didn't follow that gimmick. Despite all that, the Guardian equip spells did see some play early on, mostly in limited formats, though Butterfly Dagger Elma was banned since it was part of an infinite loop with Gearfried that made the game unplayable, so consider that one broken. It also meant that Guardian Elma is impossible to summon now, which I always found funny and a bit sad. But on the topic of this entry, Chaos had some interesting features to it. The effect is, the equipped monster gains 500 defense, but any spell effects that target the equipped monster get negated and destroyed. The defense boost is inconsequential. Raising defense is already a lesser strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh, but the supposed drawback of this card negating spell cards is where things get messy. First off, it's Guardian, Chaos. Her effect is that she's unaffected by spell effects and cannot be targeted for attacks. Since she's unaffected by spell effects, she doesn't even get the boost from her own equip card. I can't tell if that's an oversight. Remember how I said in the anime almost all the Guardians eventually got to wield their own equip spell? Chaos was the only one not to. Raphael kept it on another monster, so even he knew it had no use on her. That being said, I always liked this monster's design. I'm not sure if it's because both her and her equip spell were common, so I had them both, or if it's because I just like mermaids and her hair color palette. It has the same as that mermaid from Escaflowne. Anyway, the rod itself, since spell effects that target the equipped monster get negated and destroyed, it means that you can't equip anything else spells to the monster because equipped cards need to target to activate. This includes cards already equipped, so Cohosts basically says screw you if you try to double up on any other equipped spells. While it sounds funny that other equipped spells can't stay on the field for the monster, it ends up being an advantage for very specific strategies. There are a few cards that like when equipped cards are destroyed. Like there's a Vylon card that benefits from it, but the star of the Cohost destruction is Smoke Grenade of the Thief, an equipped card that got banned thanks to effects like Cohost, where if Grenade is destroyed by an effect, in this case Cohost, you can look at your opponent's hand and make them discard a card. And remember how hand-ripping effects can get cards banned? Well, Smoke Grenade could combine with cards that retrieve spells from the graveyard, and you could potentially re-equip it and destroy even more cards in your opponent's hand, since Cohost is eternal and Smoke Grenade has no limit per turn. Cohost wasn't the only card to help Smoke Grenade, but its effect definitely turned it from pack filler from the early days into a looming threat when Grenade was legal. In the end, I love how Cohost is either utterly useless, especially with the monster that owns it, or leads to a broken strategy that makes players want to quit, making it great material for the weirdest equipped spell in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, what did you think? Did all these equipped spells match up with the last batch, or were some of them just too normal for Yu-Gi-Oh! Today? And what are some of your favorite weird equipped spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whether we discussed them or not? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.